Today is not a Friday, but I had an epiphany yesterday. If you don't know what that is, look it up. It's not dirty. And I have decided I'm probably going to restructure how I shoot videos on Friday. Because unfortunately, I think it encourages people to email me because then I do videos about these emails I get. So I will not be doing videos about emails I get, and I'll tell you why. I spoke yesterday about the situation where there's a couple schools in Florida that are selling diplomas for nursing school. So you just buy a diploma, sit for the test, and you could pass the test and become a nurse without having gone to school. And I said, I've never gone to nursing school and never sat for the nursing exam, but I imagine it's difficult. I said, however, I did sit for the bar after going to law school. So, I think I can kind of understand a little bit about that. But the point is that you do the schooling and then you sit for the professional examination and then you become licensed to do something. And I got an email from a guy as a wall of text. So I'm not going to read the entire thing to you because it would take too long, but I'm going to summarize it. And he said, your bar exam analogy was wrong. It was wrong. He said, you're privileged, and law school is for elite and privileged people. Nursing school is for blue-collar people. You can't relate to what nurses go through because where they come from. They're blue-collar people, whereas law schools are for the elite and privileged. And he made a comment about how affordable nursing school is compared to law school. Now, I don't know. I've never priced the two, but I wasn't talking about the price. I was simply talking about the fact that I've gone to law school and taken a test. Nurses go to school and take a test. There's obviously a pretty clear analogy there. But he said, law school is for the elite and privileged people. Nursing school is for blue-collar people. And so I wrote him back, and all I wrote was, I'd forgotten how inexpensive and affordable nursing school is. And he wrote me back and goes, you're a dick. You're a dick. Now, I apologize for using harsh language on this video, but why, huh? So I've decided, as a result of that exchange right there, I'm going to draft language that says simply, this is my work email. I do not answer questions or complaints about videos here because of the fact that past interactions have, generally speaking, not accomplished much. So I thank you for contacting me, but I will not be responding to your questions or comments about the video. Thank you very much, Steve. And I'm going to start doing that from now on. Because number one, the idea that I'm privileged and law school is for the privileged and the elite. I borrowed a ton of money to go to law school and got very little financial help from anybody else other than through loans. And my parents did kick in a tiny amount of money. And I say tiny because the law school cost was so large. And I know other people in my class. One guy was a supermarket manager. He managed a supermarket. And he quit that job to go to law school. And his wife went to work while he was in law school. Another friend of mine was an insurance adjuster who worked for State Farm, I believe, and stopped doing that to go to law school while his wife worked. Now, I suppose we could be privileged and elite if our wives worked to help us get through law school. But that's generally not what people think of as privileged and elite. You got a wife who works? Wow, you're privileged and elite. I was not married when I was in law school. And like I said, I just borrowed a ton of money. And so the idea that lawyers come from the privileged and the elite, whereas nurses come from blue collar. By the way, I'm not knocking nurses. This was not intended as a knock on nurses. In fact, I got a very good, nice email from a friend of mine yesterday who sent me a note about, he goes, Steve, I watched your video and it's a shame because I know many nurses and they're such wonderful people. And I wrote him back and I said, yeah, nurses are underpaid, underappreciated, and the world would fall apart without them. And I mean that. And so, every nurse I've dealt with, I'm pretty certain, does stuff that I would have a hard time doing. I'm simply saying that I mentally would have a hard time doing what they do. I couldn't deal with it. I couldn't. So it's a different mindset. Now, whether it's a blue-collar mindset, I don't know. But apparently I'm a dick. So that's the end of that. I'm no longer responding to emails that ask questions or comments about my videos. I do say at the end of every video, questions or comments, put them below. Below is the commentary section under the video. I know I'm preaching to the choir here because the guy who called me that's not going to be watching this, but I'm just letting you know, if you ever write me an email saying, Steve, I have a problem with your last video, you're going to get a form email in response. And don't do that as a test either. Meanwhile, I'm shifting gears here. Meanwhile, I got a really cool pile of stuff from the P.O. box yesterday, including 3 new t-shirts, 2 of which I've already worn. And I had a couple others that are going to get in there, so some new blood in the t-shirt collection. I'm looking over there because that's where my rack is. And I got this package, and on the front, in ink here, it says, do not bend. Do not bend. And so I'm like, oh, I wonder what's in the do not bend package, because it's not a t-shirt. You can bend t-shirts, I think. The last of the t-shirt benders includes a note. Hi, Steve. It is always interesting to listen to your videos. Michigan is a beautiful state. It is fascinating to hear you talk about it. You know the state well. My father passed away 4 years ago. One of his interests was, one of his passions, and that was geography, collecting postcards, and he liked geography and collecting postcards. He had a collection of nearly 200,000 postcards. I only have 2 small boxes of postcards, one of which these cards came from. So he sent me a stack of cards. These are from his collection. It is the only one I kept. The rest were donated to the club he belonged to for 50 years. So he's a member of a postcard collecting club. He was especially interested in lighthouses. He had many postcards with lighthouses from all over the world. He attempted to complete a list, which he wanted to publish in a book, though he never got to that. The cards I find most interesting are the ones with notes on them. I included one from the Rhode Island Postcard Club, which my father was one of the members who designed it. I am not as passionate about collecting postcards as he was, but he had a lot of them. 200,000, I'd say so. From all over the world, featuring a variety of topics. Looking at the one box, I found these and thought you might find them interesting, as they all have a Michigan connection. They depict places you've spoken of in your videos. I hope you can appreciate them as much as my father did. Enjoy. And he signed it with his initials, RJA. So I don't know what his first name is, but RJ, thank you very much for passing these along. And these won't translate as well as I hold them up, but there's one of the Mackinac Bridge. And as he said, he likes postcards that have notes on the back. And so some of these were actually mailed and kept by people. And so the postcard here says, by the postmark, that it was sent in 1963. And it says the Mackinac Straits Bridge. And officially it's called the Mackinac Bridge now, but they originally called it the Mackinac Straits Bridge. Joining Michigan's peninsulas, connecting the two. Interesting statistics on the bridge, designed by Dr. David B. Steinman. It's got the facts and figures about it. And then it's a note sent to Mr. and Mrs. Clinton Sharp in Providence, Rhode Island. And it said, had a nice visit with Sandy and Sarah's real cute, and et cetera. So just a little note, family members writing back and forth, but with the photograph there of the Mackinac Bridge. So here's another one of the Mackinac Bridge, all lit up. This one was mailed in, I don't see a date. Oh, 1961. It's overstamped on something else. And this again has writing on the back, and it's got the bridge at night. And it says, hi, Caroline. I hope you are a lot better now. We are okay. And it talks about some family matters, and this is to Carolyn, who is in Lorain, Ohio. And then there's a bunch more. Here's one of the Manitou Trail near Traverse City, now called the Tunnel of Trees, M22. I drove my Viper up there a couple years ago and put that video up on my channel somewhere. And this was sent to somebody in Toledo, Ohio, back in 1967. So I presume that's looking south because that road is on the west side of the state of Michigan. And then there's a bunch of others, and some of these don't have anything written on them. But here is an aerial view of Greenfield Village. That's kind of cool, but that was shot a few years ago, I'm guessing back in the 60s, maybe earlier than that. Greenfield Village is a historic village that was assembled on site as part of the Henry Ford Museum complex in Dearborn, Michigan. It's a very, very cool place to visit. Second National Bank building in Saginaw, Michigan. Saginaw, Michigan, which is right about there, if Michigan's a hand. Here is a card, more modern, from Michigan's copper country. And the man in the middle is a miner. He welcomes you as you drive into downtown Houghton. Top left is the Copper Harbor Lighthouse, I believe. Yeah, that's it. And there is a photograph from a mine tour on the bottom left. And the Houghton Hancock Lift Bridge is in the middle there, right above my finger. And then, of course, that house right there, that's the Quincy House. That's the hoist house. It's not a home that somebody lives in. It's a building, houses a big steam hoist. And then here we've got Frankfurt postcard. Frankfurt, again, is another little town that would be over here towards Traverse City Way, a little bit, down the coast a ways. Au Sable Point, lighthouse located along Lake Superior's rugged shoreline, pictured rocks, National Lakeshore in Michigan's Upper Peninsula. Very, very cool lighthouse. It's open. You can go up there and walk around that observation deck at the top, and you can see Lake Superior off in the distance. And then here is the Eagle Harbor Lighthouse. Eagle Harbor, another beautiful little town on the Keweenaw Peninsula. Tawas Point. Tawas is in the Lower Peninsula. That would be over down here away. Marquette Harbor Lighthouse. Marquette, Michigan. There you go. And you can't see it very well, but there's also a very, very faint photograph there of a Marquette Maritime Museum, which is in Marquette. The Straits of Mackinac lighthouses. So the Mackinac Bridge connects the Upper Peninsula and the Lower Peninsula and crosses the Straits of Mackinac. And around that area are 4 lighthouses at St. Helena, Old Mackinac Point, Mackinac Channel Light, and the Round Island Lighthouse. Point Iroquois. Point Iroquois is located 5 miles west of Brimley. That would be in Michigan's Upper Peninsula. Tawas Point Lighthouse, again, Tawas down in the Lower Peninsula, just above the Thumbways. Point Aux Barques Lighthouse. Point Aux Barques is where it's the very, very tip of the thumb, right up here. I've taken my canoe out in the water there and gone around some of the interesting geological formations, which I like so much. Rock Harbor Lighthouse on Isle Royal, Michigan. Never seen that one myself because I've never been to Isle Royal. Grand Haven on the western shore over by Lake Michigan, popularly known as the Coast Guard City, USA. Solshoy Point Light. This, of course, was built in 1892, east of Manistee. And I hate to point it out, but there's a typo in the description. It says Manistee. But these things happen, and I just simply can't read something without spotting the typos because that's the curse of being a writer. Here's somebody taking their boat out onto Lake Michigan, I believe. It says, most of the harbors along Michigan's shoreline provide charter and boating services because of the Chinook and coho salmon, steelhead, and lake trout are irresistible challenges to the sport fishermen. Charlevoix, I've seen that bridge many times. Charlevoix is up again in this area. Beautiful little town. There's Lake Charlevoix, and so the boats can pass under that bridge to go from the big lake, Michigan, to the little lake, Charlevoix. And then we've got Point Betsy Lighthouse, same general area, kind of up there by Traverse City. Copper Harbor Lighthouse, one of my favorite places on earth. Copper Harbor Lighthouse is famous for the lighthouse. Copper Harbor is. Fort Wilkins and departure point to Isle Royal National Park. And so there you go. And then he said in his letter to me that there's at the back a photograph that I found interesting, he said, and he sends it to me. And I don't know if this is a photograph or a postcard. It's not printed as if it's a postcard on the back, so this might be a photograph. But it's interesting because it says this is the Singing Walshes. The Singing Walshes. I'm guessing it's a family. They entertain President Kennedy and his family at Hammersmith Farm, Summer White House, Newport, Rhode Island, and it's signed Alex Walsh. Okay? So if you look very, very closely, you'll notice that there is JFK and there's Jackie. And I kid you not, the photograph is dated September 22nd, 1963. And so this was exactly 2 months to the day before JFK was assassinated. So September 22nd, 1963, the Singing Walshes entertained President Kennedy and his family at the Summer White House. So there you go. That's the kind of thing that I am utterly fascinated by. I thank you for sending these to me. And you're right, I do greatly appreciate them. These are many places I talk about, and when I can't be there, I'm happy to look at photographs and postcards and whatnot. So again, RJA, thank you so much for sending that. I greatly appreciate it. As always, if you want to mail me something, feel free to do so. I wear a double XL when it comes to shirts, 2X's. I know, I'm husky. I'm taller than I look on camera. And the P.O. Box is in the address, the end of all my videos, except for these, but it's P.O. Box 168, Atlas, Michigan. Atlas, like the guy who's holding the world on his shoulders. 48411. Questions or comments? Put them below. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.